I'm Nick Westergaard, and this is On Brand, helping you tell your story. What if you could test your business strategy in days instead of months? That's what Kate O'Keefe, CEO and co-founder of Heatseeker, makes possible. From building the first AI-powered platform for market experimentation to helping companies validate strategy, positioning, and buyer demand at lightning speed, Kate's career is all about turning bold ideas into measurable results. Former BCG partner and Silicon Valley innovator, she's here to show how AI is rewriting the rules of testing ideas fast, smart, and with real data. My interview with Kate is coming right up, but first.
Hey marketers, Deborah Eckerling here.
And I'm Keith Smith, and we host the MPN Meta Marketing Show, which is not just another marketing podcast, but the marketing podcast about all the other marketing podcasts.
Podcasts are booming, right? We love them, and people actually listen. They don't scroll, they don't swipe, well, except maybe during the ad breaks.
But here's the secret. With the Marketing Podcast Network, your ads don't make people hit skip. We put your brand on shows that people actually want to hear.
That's right. We match your message with podcasts that make marketing nerds like us perk up and take notes, or at least nod knowingly, pretending they understand.
And don't worry, because we'll deliver your ad naturally. People might even think that we love your brand personally, which of course we totally do, unless it's a veggie smoothie, then maybe not.
If you want your brand heard without making listeners roll their eyes,
head to marketingpodcasts.net and catch marketing fans at work, rest, and play. Seriously, your audience is already listening. Make sure they hear your brand and not our awkward jokes.
Join the conversation, because good ads shouldn't just be tolerated, they should be enjoyed.
Yes!
You enjoy podcasts. We know because you're listening to one. Hi, I'm Jason Falls, the executive producer of the Marketing Podcast Network. We love podcasts too, so much so that in addition to providing you with the great episode you're listening to, we also help businesses, brands, and even individuals produce their podcasts. MPN Studios offers podcast consulting and production services to help you get you or your business its very own podcast. We've helped dozens of smart people, advertising agencies, and brands develop podcasts. All you do is record your content or interview. We take that and deliver a professionally produced audio or video episode complete with show notes, transcriptions, and even promotional clips to use on social media. And our monthly subscription prices are hard to beat. If you or your company are jonesing to have your own podcast to establish thought leadership, drive business leads, or just have fun talking about your business or topic of choice, we'd love to help. Learn more at marketingpodcasts.net/studio. That's marketingpodcasts.net/studio.
Kate O'Keefe, welcome to On Brand.
Thank you, Nick. So great to be here.
You know, we were talking a bit, and then I had to do I got to zip it up and hit record. Otherwise, we're going to say interesting things that I'm going to wish that I would have recorded. But I think in this ecosystem that we find ourselves in, there's no shortage of conversations about AI. And I think especially when it comes to brand strategy, positioning, we go right to, it's going to take our jobs. And I think an important thing to consider are some of the positive applications. And I'm fascinated by Heatseeker. And I wonder if you'd start by just explaining a bit about what the platform does.
Yeah. So for so long as marketers, we haven't had great tooling when it comes to understanding and validating who our customers are, really, what the jobs are that they're trying to do with our products, what some of the deep-seated, hidden, secret desires and insecurities that they have are. And therefore, we haven't had the great tooling to kind of understand how we lean in and serve our customers better. I kind of equate it to accounting. So Nick, we've never had our accountants say to us, or we've never let it be okay if they've said, well, we chatted to 30 people and they say we're solvent and that's good enough. But in marketing, we have, we don't have better tooling. So we put surveys into the market, and the surveys said that people wanted to buy our products. We had 70% willingness to buy, and we've done the math on those surveys now, Nick, and there's something like only a 20 to 30% correlation between people telling us they will buy and whether or not they actually do. Like, these tools are rubbish. And yet, they touch almost every product that we buy is influenced by this data and this information. It's slow, it's out of date. And on average, the average marketer makes 200 to 400 customer micro decisions a day.
Wow.
If we think about that, and we think about how many marketers we have on our teams, I multiply that by how many marketers we have in our organization, we're talking about thousands of customer-facing decisions being made, microcopy being written, which dot point goes to the top, which benefit, which feature we're going to talk about to which segment, what does this segment, really consist of, and who's in and who's out. This is what we mean when we say that culture eats strategy for lunch. It's in those micro decisions. So what Heatseeker seeks to do is give every marketer real-time access to statistically significant, data-driven representatives of their customers. Personas, if you like, or avatars, if you like, of their segments that are built using market experimentation data, which we can talk a bit more about in a minute, and built on a company's first-party customer data. And we bring those together, we pull the signal from the noise, and we give your entire team what they need to riff and spar with customers. We don't just need one answer, every once in a while. We need 200 to 400 answers a day, apparently. And that's how brands are going to keep their promises to their customers. And that's really what a brand is, right? It's a promise we're making to our customers, and how that promise is kept is through that deep, real-time, data-backed understanding.
So you mentioned market experimentation, and what are the biggest mistakes companies make when testing new ideas or products, and how can AI help us to avoid them?
Yeah. So the biggest mistakes that I see when we're running experiments is probably when the experiments start. Often folks run experiments right at the end of the life cycle. All the decisions are made. This is who we're going after, guys. This is the product. This is the benefits this is what's going to sell or not. And then right at the end, it's like, we're going to test the campaign. And it's great to test the campaign. Don't get me wrong. We can and must test our campaigns so we can take bigger risks. I'd love to talk to that as well. A lot of people think that AI is going to make our marketing worse, but I actually think it can mean we can take bigger risks when we test out our campaign. But where the experimentation needs to start is really, really early in the funnel. It's when we need to be testing what customer pain points, what are the human frictions they have. We need to test those. We need to get to statistical significance across our segments about what do people, really want, and what are they most worried about? And, what are some of the desires behind the desires? Nick, we say we want longevity, but really we want to look hot. And we need to know the difference. We need to know the difference. We may not even, reveal those answers to ourselves. But, when we look at what we respond to, we can see some of those deeper truths. And so what we're trying to do is help companies easily, quickly run tests like that early in the funnel, explore who our customers are, quantify, our segments and what those needs are aligned to that, and then get into what are their buying drivers, what benefits matter to them, What features do they care about most? I mean, I got to tell you, Nick, it shocks me how few brands can tell me segment by segment what is the one thing that makes that segment buy. They might, and God forbid, the second thing or the third, but the one thing is so rare that we have that quantified so that we can count on it, talk about it, respond to it in real time. So we're trying to remove surveys that are notoriously unreliable. We all know, all great marketers know how to game a survey. You know what, Nick? You're a good person. You care about the environment. You're wearing green today. You'll pay an extra $6, to pay for a carbon credit on top of it. But we didn't. We don't. But the survey said that we would. And don't even get me started on, the recent U.S. elections. We thought polls said we were going to behave one way, and people behaved a really different way. So we know the surveys are corrupt. When we look at these panels that a lot of these surveys go to, the people on these panels or the bots that are on these panels chasing gift cards. Mm-hmm. I had a friend who told me that he asked his survey company to get his panel to turn their cameras on when they were responding to his survey so that, he could, get some verbatim so we could share it around to the company, look at what our customers are saying about our product. And he's like, oh my God, Kate, you should have seen this video. We had, people with no pants. We had, people in trailer parks. We had people. This was an elite aspirational product. And they told me this was my target market. So look, we got to pull surveys out. We got to pull panels out. We got to do better by marketers. We got to get them better tooling. They deserve better tooling. And that's the kind of tooling that lets them do experiments quickly and easily. And the kind of tooling that allows them in real time, not 6 weeks ago when they put the panel in the market or they put the survey out there. They need answers today. And while we're riffing and building our product or campaign, Nick, there's no need for you or me to argue or no need for me to pitch you. We can just see what the customers are asking and responding to. And that's what's so important. It's not just that behavioral data you can rely on through experiments. It's how it's delivered to you. And it's got to be real time.
So as we talk about time and speed, how do you balance speed with rigor? Can fast experimentation ever lead to or mislead decision making?
Can vast experimentation ever mislead?
Or fast, sorry.
Yeah. Look, it depends on how the experiment is crafted, of course. I see this a lot. I see experiments where we have 5 different campaign creatives with really different imagery, really different fonts, really different whatever, and they are emphasizing different kinds of value propositions. And we'll put them out there on Meta, as an example, full of algorithmic noise, changing how different ads perform at different times. And then we'll look at the performance of that disparate creative, different ads on that platform. And we'll come to very confusing decisions about what we've just done. Well, we tested a whole bunch of different creative and different value props, and we were testing everything at once. And so now we know that this is the value prop that matters for this segment. And it looks convincing, Nick. It looks 100,000 people saw the test, and there must be some clarity here. But of course, we need to test one thing at a time. We need to test, same creative, same image, in a panel of ads, perfectly variable controlled, changing only the one thing that we're testing for. And that's what our panel does and makes super, super easily. We won't let you mess up your experiments by accidentally testing 2 or 3 variables in the one panel of ads. And the second that panel, that experiment hits statistical significance, we pull it down. Because what we want you to do is run many low-cost ads. And once the delta between the winner and what comes second is high enough, we pull it down, and that'll give you, it's this value proposition with this benefit, with this creative, with this particular segment, but this other segment prefers this other thing. We've got to give you that creative at a level of stat sig, at a level of statistical significance that you can count on, and that you can share. The battle is not just getting the right answer, Nick. It's getting the right answer that you can share with your entire team, with your boss, with your board. And it's incredibly compelling to say that 300,000 people saw this experiment or participated in 7 experiments that we ran over time. And this is what they responded to. This is what lit them up. And this is what got us to the right answer. And, innovation moves at the speed of trust. When people can trust the data that you've given them, they can get behind, the decisions that you've made so everybody can move faster.
On Brand will be right back after this.
You enjoy podcasts. We know because you're listening to one. Hi, I'm Jason Falls, the executive producer of the Marketing Podcast Network. We love podcasts too, so much so that in addition to providing you with the great episode you're listening to, we also help businesses, brands, and even individuals produce their podcasts. MPN Studios offers podcast consulting and production services to help you get you or your business its very own podcast. We've helped dozens of smart people, advertising agencies, and brands develop podcasts. All you do is record your content or interview. We take that and deliver a professionally produced audio or video episode, complete with show notes, transcriptions, and even promotional clips to use on social media. And our monthly subscription prices are hard to beat. If you or your company are jonesing to have your own podcast to establish thought leadership, drive business leads, or just have fun talking about your business or topic of choice, we'd love to help. Learn more at marketingpodcasts.net/studio. That's marketingpodcasts.net/studio.
In America, half of every dollar spent on brand medicines goes to entities who don't make them. While middlemen like PBMs and 340B hospitals drive up costs, Biopharma is investing $500 billion in new infrastructure and manufacturing here at home, and helping patients buy medicines directly at lower prices. Tell Washington to end middlemen markups and put American patients first. Visit phrma.org/middlemen.
Now, back to the show. So earlier you reminded us of that axiom that culture eats strategy for lunch. How do you foster a culture of experimentation without it feeling chaotic or, even ending up in with risk fatigue?
That's a great question. I've always said that the best way to change behavior is not to change behavior. As someone who was originally a designer, Nick, changing behavior and creating products that change the behavior was like a real passion of mine. But it's really, really hard. So many great products have been sacrificed at the altar of behavioral change. Just look at this Segway. Great product. It's going to change everything. But looky here, the behavior of walking is one that is pretty deeply ingrained in the human psyche. But behavioral change is really hard. So what we got to do is, we got to hook that behavior into something that people already do. And that's why Heatseeker now presents your experiment results, the data from your experiments, the data that we've pulled from your performance marketing, and, we blend it with what's gone into the baskets, and, we coalesce that data to present you with a human avatar. We call it a synthetic persona that you can talk to, because people like talking to customers. They love talking to customers. Don't get me wrong, right? When they're talking to customers, they really hold their tongue about a lot. They don't want to give them a hard time. They don't want to end up on the front page of the New York Times for asking their customer a really controversial question. They don't want to grab that customer by the lapels and say, why didn't you buy my campaign from 9 months ago? But we can allow you to do that, with these synthetic personas that we give you. So, what we're finding is that for some of these brands that really want to move fast is they want everybody to have access to this voice of the customer. Everyone who's making one of those, 200 to 400 customer decisions a day, they all need, to have that representative of the customer available to them all day. They need to be blunt. It needs to be real time. You need to argue with them. You need to say why. You need to say, I don't agree with you. And that persona needs to not only give you an answer that is statistically backed by everybody else in their segment, but they also need to back their answer up with all of the citations from where that data came from that sits behind that decision that you're giving them. So when it comes to sort of how did we change the culture, for a long time, Nick, we failed. For a long time, we were offering our customers a great experimentation platform, and we were delivering survey style, market research style, graphs and dashboards. And, it was good. People were using it occasionally. Every few weeks they would run another experiment. But it's the long tail of all day long decisions, Nick, where culture eats strategy for lunch. And so that's really what we wanted to tap into. Like, what's the paradigm that needs to change so that entire brands can tap into all of those micro decisions that are happening? And so that's why we've gone down the pathway of, for all of your important segments, giving you a synthetic persona to talk to or chat to, so that you can riff and spar. They can even write a headline or two for you. And then once you've crafted your hypotheses, if it's time to drop a couple $1,000,000 on the campaign, let's run some of those experiments for reals. Like, let's go back to the market. Let's stop relying on the synthetic. I mean, it's 90 to 95% correlated to real world behavior, but push comes to shove, the board wants 100% correlation. Let's run a live market experiment, which is also great because that feeds the beast, that feeds the flywheel of data we need for your synthetic personas to stay correlated. So that's how we're creating culture, Nick. And what's wild is unexpected side effects of working this way. It's much shorter meetings because we're not arguing anymore about what the customer might want. We don't have to shop around all day, like polishing the survey and wordsmithing and, agonizing over all of that stuff has been sorted out. We can just ask in real time. We can bring our persona to the meeting. These guys have been going to meetings, giving their perspective on what's been shared. And that's how culture changes, Nick, by trying as best we can not to change it. And people like talking to people.
So as we sit here with this year wrapping up and so many looking ahead, where do you see AI-driven market experimentation going in the next few years? You talked about traditional market research. Will it replace it entirely?
I don't think it will replace high quality long form ethnography. It won't replace exploratory human to human, you and me, Nick, having a long form conversation, about your life and your motivations. I'm building this product at speed. I love spending an hour or two with my customers about, well, what gets you promoted? What are you insecure about? Why did you choose to promote the last person that you promote? Like, these are topics that nibble at the edge of deeper human meaning. And I think that there will always be space for the humanity that has to sit at the heart of this work. It's the funny thing about, being in AI and marketing and creating synthetic personas is that people think that it's not about people, but it's the opposite. It's about how do we get more of that nuance and more of the human vulnerability and foible and contradictions, into what marketers can work with. So look, I think there'll be more of this, more of the you and me's, talking and exploring and unpacking, what matters to us in our lives, and how we feel fulfilled. But then once I've heard that from you, Nick, and once I've pulled out, I think these are Nick's jobs to be done when he chose that green sweater today. But then what I got to do is I've got to find a way to quantify, is this something that's unique to Nick, or is this somebody that everybody in that segment also needs or is trying to achieve? And so it's this dance between deep qualitative exploration, and then how do we quantify what I've heard from you and find out for my 4 or 5 segments, how many share some of these questions that Nick has. And so I think it's the dance between the two that's super important. I also think that this kind of experimentation will ultimately give marketers a lot more permission to swing for the fences. What we need when we have bold creative and we want to swing for the fences, what we need is great data backing us up that lets everybody trust us. It lets everybody, when the higher ups are clutching their pearls and saying, oh my goodness, this isn't going to fly. And, this isn't who we are. And this isn't what our market wants. The old, arguments, that we're trying to resolve here. It's great data that shows we've done some micro experiments. This is how well they performed. We don't have to say trust me anymore. We don't need the horn rimmed glasses wearing genius, wandering around the office, making people, trust them through their vibe. We've got the great data that means that all of us can have bigger, bolder ideas, because we know that that's what our customers want and need when it comes to the kind of creative that moves culture.
Well, Kate, that last answer made me smile, and it is my turn to ask you. That was a little segue there, not the walking disruption type of segue that we were talking about earlier. But it is my turn to ask you for a brand that has made you smile recently.
Yeah. So a brand that has made me smile recently is L'Oreal. Not just because we work with L'Oreal, and that they're a great partner of ours, but because of some work that they've been doing recently around joining the refill movement. They had a campaign that was about sustainability. We've all seen, great brands talk about sustainability, but what I love with this idea of joining a movement. I love how they're tapping into that human need to feel like, I'm part of a movement. I'm part of a revolution. I think that's really clever. I think that's really smart. It reminds me of a trick someone taught me in marketing very long ago is don't ask people to recycle, ask them to be a recycler. It's much more enticing. We all want to be something. We all want to go somewhere. And I really liked how L'Oreal tapped into that. And it's been great working with them, to see how committed they are to working with their customers. And even though, despite all of the amazing technology that they have that helps them understand their customers better, it's been great working with them and, hearing how they're so committed to understanding those customers that they want to run an experimentation stack like ours.
Awesome. Well, an on-brand smile indeed. Kate, where can folks go to learn more about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, jump on heatseeker.ai, or find me on LinkedIn, Kate O'Keefe. Respond to all DMs. Love talking to marketers and riffing with them about their bold ideas and how I would structure an experiment to test their next campaign.
Awesome. Well, we will link up to that in our show notes, which folks can always find at onbrandpodcast.com. Kate O'Keefe, thanks for being on brand with us.
Thanks, Nick. It was so much fun.
On Brand is part of the Marketing Podcast Network. If you like what you're hearing, if we've made you smile, you can always listen free on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or whatever your favorite platform may be. And please take a moment and rate and review the podcast to help others find the show. Until next week, I'm Nick Westergaard, and I'll see you on the internet.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Hennica Watkins-Porter hosts The Entrepreneurial You, empowering entrepreneurs with insights on leadership, business, and success. Hennica, tell listeners what to expect from your show.
So we provide innovative business strategies and practical solutions to common entrepreneurial challenges.
And where can people subscribe?
Find us at hennicawatkinsporter.com, as well as the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcasts.net, or search for it wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.